Hi, welcome. I'm Joy, and this is
Jackie.
and we're excited to be talking to you today about how to raise a joyful reader. I'm the associate principal of the Early Childhood Division here at Academia Cotopaxi, and Jackie is our amazing special services coordinator and an expert in early childhood literacy as well. She works with many of our kids here in reading, and so we're excited to be here together. Um, a lot of what we're going to talk about today is how you, as a parent, can be really creating a joyful environment in your home, create readers who are joyful. And a lot of times, we parents, we don't know necessarily if we should be a teacher or what our role is. So today we're going to talk about, what can you do to best support your child at home for them to really love reading? Because what research shows over and over is that when kids love to read, they will become great readers. So they choose to read. That's what we want. They will be amazing readers. So we'll go ahead and look at some slides. This talk I've actually done for many years, to preschools, to schools all over the country. And I always like to start with why. Why do parents really need to be involved? Why is reading such a huge thing? Um, and really, the research and the foundation of reading is so important. Why? And some of this is kind of crazy to think about. Reading really is the most important subject in school. We know that because it's in everything, in science, inquiry, in math, in writing. They go hand in hand. It's actually one of the most important skills in life. We know that people who are literate actually are more successful as far as jobs, even interpersonal relationships, feeling successful in life, traveling around the world. It's hard to do if you're not a reader. As well as, this one is always kind of funny when I say this, but reading can affect the life of your grandchild. So if you think about it that way, it kind of brings the importance really, wow, head on. Because what you do with your child now determines the kind of reader they're going to become, which in turn affects the learner and their future. And so the future of your child then affects their children, obviously. And the next, we'll kind of talk more about that. It's not to um, scare you, but this is really true. And research shows this again and again. Jim Trelease is a big researcher on reading aloud to children. And he has a book called The Read Aloud Handbook. And pretty much the research shows again and again, the more you read, the more you know. The more you know, the smarter you grow. The smarter you are, the longer you stay in school. And then it just keeps going. The longer you stay in school, the more education you have, the more money, the more healthy even you become, more stable relationships. And it just continues to show that. And then, of course, the opposite is true. So kids who or struggle with reading and continue often feel defeated and not good about it. And you don't want to do something you're not good at. And so that affects school in general and their feeling of school. And that's when kids start to drop out. And then, of course, we know if we don't have a high school diploma and college degree, what that can do. So that's a lot of the research that backs up the why. Now we'll move to a slide. I don't think we have any questions yet coming in, but please feel free. Once again, I didn't point that out, but we are live, so you can um, hashtag AC Community, hashtag Learning Community on Twitter, or your questions right here, and we can start answering them as we go. So this slide just goes on to tell you about the opposite, which I kind of just talked about. It's not just, again, it's just reality. So we'll keep going. So why is raising a joyful reader important? This is an interesting quote I always go back to. And Lucy Calkins is one of the big researchers in literacy. And she has this quote, and it says, if there is a literacy crisis in this country, it doesn't involve around whether children can read, but rather whether they choose to read. And I think it's a crisis in the world, actually. Are we creating children who choose to read? Are they passionate about it? Do they love it? And that's where that joyful piece come in. And how can we do that as parents and foster that? Just like we would anything else, how we, foster the arts, or we foster music, or math in our home. So this is going to be on reading and how we can really foster this. And Jackie and I have some great ideas here to share with you. So please feel free to ask any questions as we go along. This is just kind of some background knowledge of what research shows all good readers have a foundation in. Sometimes as parents, we see all these words and on even report cards, and we don't know what they mean. So, like phonemic awareness is this, like hearing it. So this is super important. This is the foundation of all reading. Can children hear the rhymes? Can they hear the sounds and words? And that's really about singing, songs, chants, playful finger play, any type of books that can be read with rhyming is awesome. Phonics is more the actual looking at the letters and seeing the sounds. The sight words are those tricky words, especially in English, that show up and they don't sound out right, but they're words that we just need to remember. And then listening comprehension, which is when you read aloud and they're understanding what's going on in the story. Vocabulary are the meaning of words. And then reading fluency and accuracy is really talking about how we read like we talk. So we don't read like a robot, right? But we read like how we talk, and that's the fluency and that's the expression of your voice going up and down. So those are just some background kind of jargon, I guess, that happen a lot that parents hear. So it's always kind of nice to hear what that means and what readers really successful.
There's a question that you can just ask people to just come out and go back in, and they should be able to get into the webinar.
Okay. So we did start the webinar, but if you're having trouble, go ahead and go back out and then try it again, and you should be able to join us. Yeah? Okay. All right. So the next slide we're going to talk about is really some strategies that good readers use. Do you want to talk about this, Jackie?
Sure. Joy, what I wanted to say, and I was going to jump in a little bit earlier, but as a parent, one of my really favorite things was the read alouds. And I think for parents at home to know that all this stuff can be done while you're reading with your child at home. You pick up a book and you're reading. You can play around with the words. You can ask if you know that your child has some sight words he's learning at school. You can see if on one page he can spot or two, and just have it be fun with your child while you're reading the read aloud. But then, back to that slide, before, when you have your read aloud book, before you get started, you can take a look through all the pictures with your child. You can ask your child to make predictions. What does he or she think the story is going to be about? And try to make connections. If it's something that your child might have a connection with, if it's a story about grandparents or traveling or trucks or cars, whatever it is, try to get your child to make some connections with that before you even get started with reading, so your child has some buy-in to the story. And then don't be afraid to stop while you're reading, to stop and talk about what your child has just read. Talk again about what they think is going to happen, the story will end. What do they think about the character in the book? It's sort of, I think, one of the things I love about a read aloud is that it's so interactive, and it's a really special time to be able to talk with your child about a book and a story and a topic,
Mhm.
and then never be afraid to read that book again.
Mhm.
If your child loved that story, go back and read it again, and maybe even see if they can tell what happened on a certain page and read the story to you, even if they're reading through the pictures.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. If you, there's one thing you take away from this webinar today, is that reading aloud to your child is the most important thing you can do to help your child be successful. It's the most important. So a lot of parents think, well, but I don't even speak English, or do I read English? Even in your native language, read to your child in that language. Them again and again, and make it joyful, like Jackie was saying. It doesn't have to be about correcting them. It's about that shared experience, that moment with the child that they'll remember forever. And our teachers know that too, that how important the read aloud is at school as well. And research shows that what kids actually remember about their teachers often is the books they read aloud. And so it's something to think about with your relationship with your own children. I think, what are they going to remember about their childhood? You want them to remember those book experiences, that reading aloud moments that
Right.
can be really special.
And keeping it fun and joyful. And as you
Mhm.
said, I think it's not for parents, for you as parents to be the teachers, to
Mhm.
be correcting them when
Mhm.
they're reading,
Yeah.
and spending too much time on having them reading to you. It takes a lot of, they want to, it takes a lot of the love out of reading if they're being coming home and being corrected on their reading and their
Mhm.
pronunciation. You got to try to keep it fun all
Mhm.
the time, and let us at school do the teaching of reading. Find a way to read and joyful at home.
Mhm. There's a question I want to get to. It says, how early can you start reading to your children? I have a whole article
That's a great
about
question.
this, but as soon as you can. And if you haven't yet, that's fine. Start today. But it is the number one thing that you can do for your child to set them up for school, because you're setting them up to be a successful reader. And that is the foundation of school, right? And so read aloud from the beginning. I mean, even there's research that shows in the womb, like when a woman's pregnant, they can hear your voice. They can, start reading to them um, right from birth. And like no matter what you read, my girlfriend read The Economist for the first 3 months to her baby, and it's just about that voice. It's about hearing the language. But then, yeah, and then you kind of move with board books, and so they can hold them even at 4 or 5 months old. Children can start to turn the pages. 6 months, they play. It's like a toy, when they grow up with books. It's like a no-brainer that they always have books around. You put them in your diaper bag, you put them in the car, you put them everywhere, and they're changing. They can hold a book, and so it's important that books. And we're going to talk about this in a second, because that's a question I always get from parents: is what can I buy, or what can I do? What can I fill my home with to help increase, my child's reading? So we're going to get to that actually.
I wanted to jump in with something, because what I have heard in Ecuador is how special books are, and that they are reserved for special times,
Mhm.
and they're rare, and so
Mhm.
they're treated as special. And I know that raising my own children in America, it was very easy to get those board books, and so my own children had those board books and used them as toys, as you say, and they could chew on them,
Mhm.
and if they ripped them, we pieced them together. But I didn't worry about them, because they were books that I knew were for my children to handle.
Mhm.
And I think that if we can here try to have a basket of books that are toy books, that are for your children to use and read and love, and go over and over and chew on them if they're little, and walk around with them. And if they do get lost, that it's not a big deal, so that they're familiar with them and they have them around with them all the time. And maybe finding secondhand books, cheaper books that you can have for your children with pictures, and keep the special ones aside for your read aloud times and things like that.
Great. Let's keep moving on here. so this is just some school jargon. I kind of went over some more, but our school is actually, I just wanted to bring attention to this, and we can talk more about this. We will be talking more about this next year, especially moving into a reading workshop where we really value what we just talked about, the read aloud, and then students having choice and reading, maximizing their reading time. And it's super important. This is showing again and again. And this is all the stuff we do at school. We do a lot to prepare your children to be joyful readers. And so we really love your partnership of helping just to keep it, joyful. Someone asked, I'd rather have a child come to school reading in kindergarten or loving to read. And I kind of had to ask some more questions. But in every case, if a child loves to read, if they love to hear stories, if they love books, they will learn to read and they'll be good readers. It's, we don't want to drill our kids with, flashcards or anything. We don't want to pressure them, like you said, and correct them. We want it to make a joyful experience. And about the meaning of the story. We always want to keep it about the meaning. So I just want to point that out.
I think, Joy, sorry, there has been parents that I've worked with who feel bad as a kindergarten teacher. When I was teaching kindergarten, sometimes the parents would say, "Oh, my child can't read yet, and my friend's child can read." Know that it doesn't matter. As long as you're working hard to instill a love for reading, and you're bounding your child with books and stories, and you're doing those read alouds, that the reading itself happens at all different developmental levels. It happens when they're ready. It's kind of like riding a bike. You can't always force it. It's going to happen. And so don't be worried if your next door neighbor's child is a pre-K student and he's reading and your child in first grade is just beginning. That's okay, as long as we're still encouraging them to love reading and not drill the reading into them. Because all those things that we just showed you that we do at school is going to help them become readers once they're here at school.
So once again, the best thing you can do for your child to help them be ready for school is to read aloud to them. But your children or many of your children are already here. They're in school. So we're going to switch to another slide. Do I help my child be a strategic and independent reader? Once again, we kind of already talked about this, but these are super important things you can do is read aloud. There it goes to them from the time they are born and never stop. Talk and listen to what they have to say about the story. One of the things parents always say to me is, "Oh, my child's not reading, they just memorized it." And that's awesome. That's what beginning reading looks like. Or just looking at the pictures and telling the story. That is beginning reading. So celebrate that and appreciate that. Building good reading habits. So that's kind of what Jackie was saying is, how we talk about books, where we keep books, how we play with books. And just that phonemic awareness coming back and just right level. You've probably heard a lot about that this year because that's one of our huge things. That we've been getting in books that are at their just right level. And what that means is those are books that kids can read by themselves with ease. And the more kids, when they begin to read, start to read books that are at their right level, not too high, not too low. So it's kind of like that Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold. Then you're matching that book with the child. It's also about choice. So if you know kind of what kind of books they're reading, what's their level, then you can guide them in choosing books at that level, but also that they're interested in, which is huge. Okay, so we're going to keep going as we have lots of slides here. Is there an issue with the audio? Okay. Okay, parents as a reading partner. So we don't want to be sitting there correcting our children when they're reading to us or when we're even reading aloud to them. We want it to be joyful. it's hard. It's just like anything when we began. Like I think about when I learned to ski. It was so hard. And the last thing I wanted someone to do is tell me like all the things I was doing wrong. I wanted them to praise me for what I was doing right. And so thinking about just being patient, always compliment first. Wow, you couldn't read that word last week, but now you can. And then just not being the one that corrects, but there are some questions you can ask to have your child reflect. So does that sound right? Does it look right? Does that make sense? So those are just some things if you really do, want to help them with the actual reading. Some questions you can ask. But have fun is the main message there. Okay, let's keep going. Oops, go back. Some teacher or parents ask, how do I know if my child is understanding the book? So Jackie talked a little bit about this. When you're reading aloud, these are this list of 7 keys to comprehension, it's called, is an awesome one. It's by Suzanne Zimmerman. And really, you can do all of this while reading aloud to a child. And just, if you did all this, just modeling it, it would be incredible. Making a prediction before you read, so guessing what's going to happen next while you read, maybe even thinking about what the author's going to write next after this book. So predictions before, during, and after. Questions, even looking at the front cover of a book, modeling like, there's an elephant and a pig, and they have a birthday hat on, so I wonder if it's one of their birthdays. Oh, the title is this. I bet that's what, and modeling that for them. Visualizing, so building that picture in your mind, that really helps kids. You talk about what you're seeing in your mind, the connecting piece. It reminds me, of that other book we read. Or it reminds me when we went camping or when we went to the market last weekend. We saw those vegetables and, do I do 5, 6, and 7?
Sure. Determining what's important in your story, trying to figure out what was the story about, what was the big idea, what was the main thing that happened in the story. Being able to ask your child to begin to make inferences. So thinking about why do you think, what was it about the character that made him respond in a certain way? And then this is the last one, is what my husband loves to do. He loves to go back and ask my kids, 5 things, and he hides the book away and he asks them different questions of things that happened in the story while keeping it fun. But asking your child to retell what happened in the story is a great way to see if they really understood what was going on. One of the things, Joy, as I was thinking about this and the other piece, for parents, I think one of the really important things is to set time aside to do this, to read with your child, because we can get so caught up in our lives, cooking, or you come home and you're doing this and that. And if you don't really take the time to sit with your child and think about asking these questions, then your child thinks you're not reading, or that you're not really into it, and so they're not into it. So when you do decide to read to your child, I think no, I'm going to be sitting here for 15 minutes and give my child my full attention, and we're really going to enjoy this book together and really get into it and explore all there is to do with this story and this reading time together, and being patient and listening and talking about it before you get up and move away.
And I think that's a good point. 15 minutes is really all you need most times, right? To talk about those books and building it into your routine. Because I know if I didn't build it into my routine, we always do it at bedtime just because it makes sense. But it's also knowing each child, right? For some kids that may not be the best because they're just, done, or maybe it's right after school, or maybe it's just when that's how you connect with your child when you come home and you see them is through a book. Right. We're going to move to look at a slide where we talk about that question that parents are always asking, which is what can I what can I buy for my child? On this one too, Jackie kind of brought this up before we move on. What if my child isn't reading yet? So this is actually, I get this question a lot. Jackie probably does as well. It's okay, like she said, just be patient. Finland, Sweden, lots of the world, children don't even start formal reading instruction until the age of 7. There are things to look for, of course, but keep reading aloud, immerse your child in print, share the joy, and find their interests. And we're going to keep going with that. Okay, this is where I was getting to. Is there anything I can buy? So this is research-based. Jim Trelease talks about the 3 things that they found in avid readers' homes and a bed bath. So what does that look like? So number 1, books. This is an interesting research study that just came out last year. And a recent study that found children who had 500 or more books in their home were 2 grade levels above in reading. That is the power of books. And I know that's so hard in Ecuador with the library system. There isn't a library system where you can go, like in the States, where you can go check out books, bring them home. But this was actually looking at ownership. This wasn't even the library. It was just talking about, because there's something about when kids own their own books and in the home. Jackie and I were talking about this before we even did this talk, about how important it is during these birthdays or special holidays that we include books and that they become a special part of that. So the Tooth Fairy brings a book, the $1 dollar and a book. That's kind of joke. And even in Halloween, it's kind of funny because I always give out treats, but I give out books, usually. And birthdays, we give books, we receive, books. That's a big deal. Do you want to share?
We always had ours was Christmas. Mm-hmm. We always had a Christmas book that we gave to our family. And probably many of our family members would get together over Christmas. And it was always a wonderful time. We'd open up our Christmas book, and then we'd have a big multi-family read aloud. All the kids would come and gather around, and my husband or I would read the book that we had given for Christmas to everybody. Mm-hmm. And so now we have a collection of Christmas books, and they all have a little note inside. We write inside the year, and the kids love going back at Christmas and seeing what. And sometimes it was just for our eldest son, Caden, and then the books were to Caden and Ryan, and then the books were to Caden, Ryan, and Griffin. So it's a new tradition, and one that you can easily start for any holiday that's special to you. Share books at that time.
Yeah, Easter basket, I always make sure there is a book in that, and it keeps all of these things. Okay, the number 2 that Jim Trelease talks about is book baskets, which seems kind of a no-brain thing, but when we put baskets of books around our house, in the bathroom, in the kitchen, maybe recipe books, bedrooms, even in the car, and you face them forward, research shows that kids are more apt to pick them up and be reading them wherever they are in the home. So that was number 2. And this is some of the baskets that I had in my home. And then you can label them differently. This gives you a little organize a home library. And once again, this goes back to the research of 500 books in your home or more. That's 2 grade levels above. That's what that's doing for your child, and how you organize it makes a difference. Research shows just facing the book out will be more inviting to your child, and they'll be more apt to read. There's an example of the home library, part of my home library I had. Just gives you an idea. And number 3 was bed lamp, and this seems like a funny one, but they saw in this research that kids who had lamps by their bed were more apt to even spend 10 extra minutes or so of reading a night, and they were empowered to take charge of their own reading lives. They had the control just because of that light switch. I'm going to stay up and just read, 10 minutes, and then I'll turn the lamp off. So they would read more in ownership of their own reading, just by having a bed lamp by their bed. This was an interesting study done about children who do actually learn to read early, and it just talks about the importance of having a variety of reading material, paper, comics, magazines, all sorts of cereal boxes as print, having paper and pencil available, and then just having people in their lives that are talking about books and talking about stories. All of this is so important. Sharing reading lives. These are some just ideas, and this will be posted on probably our blog too. But just some ideas about how to promote literacy in your home. Jackie mentioned like that family reading night. You can also do this weekly, where everybody chooses books, notes, and lunches. That's literacy. I want to highlight that. Maybe the books that were special to you when you were little, kids love that. There's so many different things to increase readers and make it joyful in your home. Postcards, letters to family, having a story be a gift, journals, scavenger hunts.
Scavenger hunts are a great idea. I love that. Having little notes on papers and sending your kids on the scavenger hunt because they're reading and they're so excited about it.
Yeah.
Kids love to do that.
So those are some ideas. I think we're going to wrap it up now. I hope that you've kind of learned something new that you could take away and bring back into your home to make you able to raise joyful readers. It's an awesome thing to see kids who choose to read and who love to read. And we thank you for all you're doing to help your children, because we see it, and when we're all working together, our children benefit. So thank you.
Thanks for your support. Thanks for reading to your kids. Bye-bye.